a scientist.
Suffice it that the blood of 1,000 men and women was spilled within these walls. Limbs twisted and broken, eyes gouged from bloody sockets, flesh burned black.
Please. You wait for death. In death, there are no accidents, no coincidences, no mishaps, and no escapes. What you have to realize is that we're all just a mouse that a cat has by the tail.
The number you have reached, 911, has been changed to a non-published number.
Warning, the following show contains conservative posturing, radical Christian ideas, and may offend pagans, Wiccans, Islamic fundamentalists, and other unenlightened individuals. Callers and guests may be subjected to brash and offensive comments by the hosts and any other type of bullying tactics available. But that's okay. We know why you're here.
This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.
Tonight is Monday, February 25th, 2008.
Welcome one, welcome all to World of the Unexplained.
Welcome and bienvenue.
Exactly, where the
Welcome.
unexplained becomes
Explain.
explainable. That's right. This is your host, Jay Scott.
This is Trey Lackey. Welcome all. Come on, sit by the fire. We'll tell you a little story.
Okay.
I don't know what that was all about.
You're in rare form tonight, my friend.
I think so. But you know what? We started the show reasonably calm and not laughing and not just sort of in the middle of like, well, don't explain, you know?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a definitely later start than what we anticipated.
That's true. I think so.
We have a lot of technical difficulties here on our end, and just a bunch of craziness going on.
Well,
talk to Chuck about that.
Yeah, basically, he's our craziness negotiator, or arbitrator, or perhaps administrator. But he's in charge of the craziness. D's not in charge of the craziness because he's just not crazy enough, I guess. I don't know.
You know how it goes.
Yeah. What is it? March 10th.
Day of the Pods.
Day of the Pods. March 10th. Day of the Pods. March 10th. Day of the Pods. March 10th. Day of the Pods. What is Day of the Pods, Scott?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think that we've got enough of the old pods out, and that's my fault. To let people know about Day of the Pods, I'll have to send an email out to our listening group there. I mean, our email list people.
Yep.
If you're not a member yet and you want to check that out, you can go to worldoftheunexplained.com, and on the front page there, you can fill out a little sheet. We apologize, our website is not exactly up to date as it should be, but
on par.
That's going to get there eventually.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to shoot Chuck. Okay. Anyway.
We'll just wound him.
Why shoot
relax.
him? Just because I can.
Just
I
relax, you know.
But we've got a very interesting topic tonight, and it's the North American Union. I think this falls into the good old conspiracy section of World of the Unexplained.
Right.
I know we've been trying to push away from Ghost for a while. We'll get some more of the Ghost people back, but frankly, I just got really bored with it, and I think Trent did too. And I think
Yeah, so
there's only so many ghost stories you can tell, guys. Come on.
I mean, ghost stories are fun. You know,
They are. They're fun,
if
but,
we're
you know.
telling ghost stories every single. Anyway, onward. The North American Union, and her name is Daneen Peterson.
Yes, Daneen Peterson,
And she-
Ph.D., Dr. Peterson.
Yes, well,
actually.
Dr. Peterson.
Yeah,
Well,
Dr. Peterson.
we'll talk about the North American Union here in a little bit, but first, Scott, what's going on with you?
I am not much, man.
Really? Nothing at all?
Nothing at all.
Yeah. Well,
I'm just working hard and skip dinner tonight to
Yeah.
be here. I'm going to try to catch it on the break here.
right. A quick sandwich.
Quick sandwich.
There's nothing like a quick dinner sandwich. I mean,
try
you
to
just
try to just jam it down my throat.
yeah.
and,
That's
be
really
done with it.
that's really the only way to eat sandwiches.
I agree.
You know, just cram them right down your throat. You know.
Is that I don't know. I'm just I'm in rare form today too. So
Is that
I
so?
am. I totally am.
So tell me, how are you in rare form today?
I just am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but what makes you pretty sure that you're in rare form? I mean, that's
I don't know. It's just been a long day.
right. And you kind of want to relax and go a little crazy
Yeah.
over here on the airwaves.
Yeah, I do.
Because we can.
I usually get here a lot earlier, and I really push the envelope tonight. And
yeah, that's
and
true.
It just stinks when that happens.
I took the wrong way to get to the studio tonight.
Did you?
Yeah, and surprisingly, I'm here on time, remarkably, because I left fairly early.
I know you got here a little later than me. I was surprised. I was like, standing outside smoking with D, and then, here comes Trent's car. And we're like, oh, you made it on time.
Yep, shockingly enough, and that is with a wrong turn.
Yeah, that's pretty good, man.
Oh man, well.
So what's been going on in the world of Trent, man?
Well, I just went down the street and got some stuff. Nothing. Really, nothing.
I thought you were getting ready to explain a drug deal here for a second. I went down to the street and I talked to my buddy.
I met my contact, Guillermo. We used the prearranged hand signal, and I got my 14 kilos of horse that I
Horse.
yeah. Nobody ever uses those words anymore for that stuff, Horse.
Horse.
Yeah. It's like when you're in 6th grade and the DARE program. I'm not really knocking those people because drugs are bad and everybody knows
drugs are
this.
bad, okay?
But I mean, when the people go in there and they start talking about the drugs and they use like these completely out of date terms, and they're not even relating
horse.
to the
What is horse actually? I don't
want
know.
to say horse was heroin.
Okay. Yeah, the phone's ringing. D will catch it.
Okay, but I mean, I'm pretty sure horse is heroin or horse tranquilizer.
Huh. I guess Special K was the animal trank.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But people just kind of use these antiquated terms, but they're kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like I've been really trying to reintroduce into the modern lexicon the phrase Tommy rot.
Yeah, Tommy rot. That's good stuff
from
man.
that episode Doctor Who when he met Charles Dickens.
I remember. Yeah, it was good stuff.
And he was just sitting there. Dickens was
just put them on hold.
Okay.
There we go. We'll let D pick that up when he comes back in.
But Tommy rot.
Tommy rot. Good term. Good terminology.
Ragamuffin.
Near
do well.
Yeah. Well, ragamuffin. I remember that was an Aerosmith lyric.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Well, because it's Aerosmith and
I think it was the late '70s though.
Oh. When they were on the horse.
Bolivian ragamuffin. They were on the horse.
They were on the horse.
Yeah, they probably were. It's like something Bolivian ragamuffin. I believe honestly that was the lyric. Yeah.
Oh my
Bolivian
God.
ragamuffin. I believe that was.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
You haven't listened to Aerosmith in a long time.
I haven't, man.
I mean, I used to be your.
I don't listen to much music at all anymore. It's a lot of talk radio.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of sad. I mean, I
It
listen
is,
to a
in a way.
nice little mixture of talk radio and music. Judging from what I listen to.
I hear you.
And I haven't listened to an American radio station in a long time. You know what's really fun though?
What's that?
Turning it on to Radio Korea and just going with it. And you don't understand a word that they're saying.
You're just hanging though.
Yeah, and you just sit there and like, oh, that pop song's pretty good. And then some of it's really lame and you think you're in a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
Because they have that Chinese music that plays.
Man.
You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I do.
Yeah, and
Sirius satellite radio, a wonderful thing. It really is.
But I mean, Radio Korea is kind of funny. You just sit there, it's like, I have no idea what these people are saying. It's awesome.
And that's okay. You're listening anyway.
Yeah, it's like, well, maybe I'll learn how to speak Korean.
I doubt it.
Okay, well, that's fair. 안녕하세요.
Exactly. Yeah, you're cheating from college days.
Yeah, I know.
That's okay though. We'll
Here's to you,
allow
Moon
you
Young.
that availability.
Yeah.
God. Moon Young
What?
Lee. Moon Young Lee.
Moon Young.
Gosh.
Oh, what a guy. I mean, we
Poor
just
guy.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
I really ain't it because we were like in our worst
We were
form.
in our worst form. Young kids, imagine, American kids in college for the first time at 20,
we weren't
20
even-
years old,
yeah.
21 years old. I don't even know how
I
old
wasn't
we
even
were.
21
No,
at the
I
time.
wasn't either, I don't think. It was bad stuff, man. Bad stuff. We,
I know.
and he was young too. I mean, we did, all kinds of stuff. We've got somebody on that other line. We just put him on for you. You might want to pick that up. The other one over there, yeah.
So,
Of course, you're going to have to hit that when he picks that up. There we go. He's got it.
He's
a trained professional.
John Norway is a professional.
That's right. That's right. Well,
Hank Estonia.
I'm going to go ahead and
No,
bring...
or are you Carl Latvia? No, I'm Carl Latvia. You're Hank Estonia.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's talk about our guest.
Anyway, tonight we've got on Daneen G. Peterson, Ph.D. I guess we should call her Dr. Peterson. She has taught before at Temple and Jefferson Universities in Philly, and she taught behavioral science, research methodology, and statistics. Oh, statistics. Oh,
bell
gosh.
curve.
Yeah.
Z-score.
Anyway, I don't remember statistics. I got out of that program. Anyway, she's the author of the website, www.stopthenorthamericanunion.com. And so we're glad to welcome her on the World of the Unexplained tonight. Daneen, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Well, sorry about the mix-up there on the phone number. My fault.
Oh, no problem.
Oh, it happens.
D handled that. So, how are things?
They're just fine. I'm busy as can be. Computers and all that. Just has been a wild day here.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Well, tell us about this North American Union. I've heard so much about it, but I haven't really had time to sit down and you know how you hear things through the grapevine, but you don't really get the whole picture.
Yeah.
Sure you don't. Well, first of all, a lot of people know about the North American Union or know of it, but don't really know what it consists of. Even people who have a fair amount of knowledge about it don't understand that it's not a single thing. It really has about 5 or 6 component parts to it. That's why most people can't zero in on it and say, oh, this is the North American Union. Now I understand, because it's made up of a lot of parts. And one of the parts that most people are connected to or understand is the situation with the illegal aliens being able to come across our border with ease because our border's not been closed off.
Yeah.
And part of having the North American Union, of course, would be to eliminate the borders, both the Mexican border and the Canadian border, to turn us into a single continental group of Canada, United States, and Mexico.
But isn't that what all these liberals want, though, Daneen? I mean, free border exchange, NAFTA to the max?
They might
Mega
want it,
NAFTA?
but that means we'd have to give up our sovereignty, and I wouldn't be too happy about that.
Oh, come on now. Let's all wear the little red armbands.
No,
it'll
the
be
red, white, and blue armband, Scott.
It'll be what was it they were coining it? Instead of having the euro, we'd have the what was
The
it?
Amero.
Amero, that's it.
Amero?
The Amero, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
I've heard people talk about this before. It's pretty scary stuff. What's going to happen to people like me who work a day job as a lawyer defending and upholding the Constitution? Where does that end?
I wish that, that was true, because most lawyers and judges and even the Supreme Court no longer pay any attention to the Constitution. So how can you uphold something you don't know a lot about? I'm not talking about you personally.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Part of you.
No, and I see that here on the district court level all the time. As a criminal defense attorney, when I represent people for DWI and things like that, it's become an unpopular crime. So the judges are more likely to let certain things slide in the name of not getting their name put in the paper.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's really interesting is that I just found an article recently that came from, in fact, it's actually a court case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it involved an American soldier in the military who refused to put on the United Nations uniform, okay?
Okay.
And when it came to the Supreme Court, there was a comment made about the issue about bringing forth constitutional law. And I'm not sure this portion of it went to the Supreme Court. I might have been one appellate area just below the Supreme Court. But after the people who put together the case in support of the fact he was correct in refusing the order to put on a United Nations uniform, his two legal people went to court, and they had literally a mountain of both historic, legal, military, constitutional law, congressional law, and United Nations evidence, and I'm reading this from my notes because I haven't written this up yet, that proved that the name of the soldier was Michael New, N-E-W, that he had been right in his, they used the word hesitancy. He actually refused to obey the order that was dangerously illegal. But when the Army actually admitted that the UN uniform was not authorized by Congress, which it is required to do for our soldiers to wear another uniform other than United States uniform. It was clear that New had not disobeyed a lawful order. But what shocked many among the observers was the fact that the judge's sudden and unprecedented rule that none of the evidence of the illegality of the order could be presented at trial. He instructed the military jury that they could not entertain the idea that the order was illegal and therefore he was convicted of bad conduct, of course, thrown out of the military.
Was he part of a peacekeeping force then? Obviously, I guess he would have to be if he had to wear the UN uniform, and so.
I'm sorry, I could barely hear what
I'm sorry. Was he part of a peacekeeping force abroad? And
yes,
that's the reason.
He was. I don't know, but what it was, Kosovo or wherever it was.
Okay.
This actually ended up all the way back in 1995. There's a video of it. He was homeschooled. He was a very bright man. Very judging from the video, which is fairly long, that I saw of him. He's just a really easygoing, quiet. He's not. You don't. If you were to meet him, you wouldn't think he would be the kind of person who would, say, no, sorry, I won't do that.
Well, he's a
he gave
patriot.
the military plenty of opportunity to say, no, you don't have to wear the uniform. Yes, it's true. We didn't get permission from Congress to do it. He gave them all sorts of opportunity. He wasn't a brash, fresh, arrogant person.
Yeah.
He's just not.
He was just a patriot. He didn't want to wear the UN uniform. I mean, I can understand that. He wanted to wear the American uniform because he's an American soldier.
Yeah.
Well, if you understand the oath of joining the military, you will understand exactly why he refused it. He was given all kinds of orders to research the United Nations and et cetera, and he did that, and he reported back to his superiors. This was a long event. This was not a one-time, in-your-face, I'm not going to wear the uniform thing. The video is really very explicit about all the steps that were taken for him to do right by the law, by his superiors, by what he felt was a violation of military code. You have a right in the military to refuse an unlawful order. All the people that went there to The Hague that belonged to Hitler's group couldn't say, well, they ordered me to do it. Well, that's, you can refuse an unlawful order, and that's exactly what he did. So it was a very interesting case. I have seen other cases where people have been told, especially people who are going to court trying to fight against the illegal income tax that is taken from us, again, in violation of our Constitution, who have tried to invoke all kinds of constitutional law, case law, and been told, you can't do that in this court. And I thought, well, if you can't bring forward constitutional law in the courts of this land, something's very wrong.
Well, I'm familiar with what you're talking about. It's what's that guy's name we had on?
Oh my gosh, U.S. versus U.S. of A.
Yeah. U.S. versus U.S. of A. When he was talking about that, I think a lot of times that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, that is.
But I do want to know about this. What would cause? What would allow America to? Why would Americans agree to something like this?
Oh, the North American Union, you mean?
Yes.
They don't. The problem is most of them don't know about it, and that's again this is another part of the advance of the North American Union. First of all, you have to go back a little bit in time. Everyone knows about NAFTA. NAFTA was signed into law in January of 1994. Mm-hmm. Well, the people that I call the one world monopolists. These are the descendants of the people who were considered robber barons back at the turn of the 20th century, who were stifled by the Sherman Antitrust Act, and they simply took their money and put their money in foundations, nonprofit foundations like the Carnegie Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation. These people are constituting what is known in our country as the shadow government. Now, the shadow government is not something that I made up. It has been around, a term has been around for a very long time, and there are many prominent people who have said that there is this government, behind the scenes of our government, that is actually running our country and has been for probably 100 years.
The Illuminati.
Yeah.
Well, see, I don't name them the Illuminati because then we get into another whole branch of the occult and this, that, and the other thing. I actually talk about the shadow government because for instance, Rear Admiral Chester Ward, he was a member of the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, which is the organizational group that stands behind the anti-sovereignty move in this country, the anti-American move. And he was a member of that CFR for 16 years, and he wrote this. He said, the most powerful clique in these elitist groups have but one objective in common, and that is they want to bring about the surrender of the sovereignty and national independence of the United States. Then there was Felix Frankfurter. He was a justice of the Supreme Court. In fact, he was the Supreme, what do they call the top guy in the Supreme Court?
Chief Justice.
Chief Justice, thank you. He said the real rulers in Washington are invisible and exercise their power from behind the scenes, and that's very true. Then Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he wrote in a letter to an associate back in November 21st of 33, he said, the real truth of the matter is, as you and I know, that a financial element in the large centers, he meant New York City, has owned the government ever since the days of Andrew Jackson. And then Senator William Jenner, even though people may not have lived in the time when he was he was very well-respected, well-known senator, and this took place back in 1994. He quoted, this is his quote, outwardly we have a constitutional government. We have operating within our government and political system another body representing another form of government, a bureaucratic elite. And that's very important, that issue of the bureaucratic elite, because I'll touch on that later, which believes our Constitution is outmoded. And, of course, George Bush made it well known that he
doesn't understand the Constitution or much of anything else.
Or much of anything else,
yes. Daneen, I'm sorry, we're going to have to take our first break tonight. If you'll hang with us, her website is www.stopthenorthamericanunion.com. Please check that out. You're listening to World of the Unexplained. Tonight, our guest is Dr. Daneen Peterson, and we'll be right back in just a second after this.
And we're back. World of the Unexplained. We got Daneen Peterson tonight, Dr. Daneen Peterson. Give us a call, 1-877-722-7382, or locally 336-996-1596. Sorry about the technical delays. It happens sometimes when you run your own show. Daneen, let's talk a little bit more about the shadow government, but you also said you had an important addition to add to that. So take it away.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Down in Washington, D.C., there's a park, a large park. Actually, my husband always corrects me. It's in Alexandria, Virginia. But most people think they were still in Washington, D.C. It's a large park filled with quite a few monuments to the glory of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, I know there are people who absolutely vilify the FDR, and there are a lot of people that loved him, and there weren't many people in between.
Right.
But in this park is a monument that was dedicated during the Clinton administration. It was the last one to be put in the park, and there was 50 years prior to that none had been added to the park. It was the time when he was on crutches because he had knee surgery or something.
Mm-hmm.
There was quite a big write-up about the dedication of that monument by Clinton. Of course, you know, he loved the press, and the press loved him.
Uh-huh.
And in that whole thing, there's not a single word printed anywhere that I could find, and I'm a researcher by profession, that spoke about this enormous engraving. This monument is 2 steps up to a flat area. On that is a chair with a bronze of FDR. He's got a cape around him. It goes all the way down to the floor. And then at his feet to the left is his favorite dog, Fala. And it's surrounded by 3 walls. They look like giant cinder blocks, but they're really huge. And I'm guessing, because I've not actually seen the actual monument itself, but I have a fabulous picture of it, which I use. Actually, I'm using it on the cover of my book, so people will get to see it. But it's also on my website under my mission statement if people want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
But on that back wall, I would say that this engraving is probably 2 feet by 6 feet. It's huge. And this is what it says. It says, they who seek to establish systems of government based on the regimentation of all human beings by a handful of individual rulers, call this a new, and I always add world because that's the current version, new world order. It is not new, and it is not order. Now, there's a perspective beyond the grave.
What was the what was the name of the park again?
I think it's called FDR Memorial Park, Franklin Delano Roosevelt Memorial Park. I believe that's what it's called.
Okay.
So that's a very important statement.
That's a very...
And it was very interesting that nothing appeared in the press about it. And they actually have a photograph of Clinton with his cane standing over close to the bronze of FDR. And there it is, but nobody talks about it. It's kind of, you know, omerta. I believe the media is under the oath of omerta, silence.
Yeah, certainly so.
Then, and in speaking of, well, here's another thing. This was talking about the whole issue of sovereignty, which is how we started our conversation. Sovereignty is an extraordinarily important issue for several reasons, and I will give you a couple of really good reasons. One of them actually comes from Dr. Robert A. Pastor. He was a professor at American University. He had his own international, can't think of the name exactly, of the department that he had, which has been since dismantled, in fact, very recently dismantled. And it kind of always bugged me that this guy, Dr. Robert Pastor, worked at American University in Washington, because he's definitely not an American at heart. He has come out very clearly and stated that excuse me, about the issues of sovereignty, that he's definitely not one to, his idea of sovereignty is going to be displaced by, and this is, again, a quote from him, he calls for, I should explain a little bit about Dr. Robert A. Pastor. He's also what I call the Pied Piper of the North American community. Now, they call it, I mean, he's a member of the CFR. He's the upfront guy. He's the guy they push out there. He's been to the Parliament in Canada and spoke before them on several occasions. He's been before our Congress on many occasions. And he's nobody, except that he's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. And he has great segue into our political governmental structures. And he has been, since 2001, promoting this North American community. And his idea of what a North American community would look like when it's all done is this, that there would be the creation of North American passports and a North American customs and immigration. Now, understand that for them, North America is Canada, the border to the north of Canada and the border to the south of Mexico, and that would be North America. He said they would have, which would have authority over the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or what do we commonly call ICE, within the Department of Homeland Security. There would be a North American parliamentary group that would oversee the U.S. Congress. Would you like that? There would be a permanent court on trade and investment, which would resolve disputes within NAFTA, exerting final authority over the judgments of our U.S. Supreme Court. How does that sit with you? That's what the North American community will look like if they're able to create it.
Well, here's my thing. You see all these, you see the dollar falling, and obviously in order to implement something like this, the dollar would have to just totally bomb.
Yes, that's actually part of the construction of the plan for one of the reasons that we're in eternal wars and the huge expense that comes with that. Anybody that has done any real historical reading understands that the crash of 29 was actually engineered by these the same kinds of people I'm talking about, the shadow government people, the bankers who manipulated the market to their benefit and caused that. The same way, a lot of people don't even understand. I've even heard Ron Paul say that on the banking committee that he's on, that they don't understand that the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. It's not connected to our government at all. It is a private consortium of bankers that runs the Fed. So, sad but true.
I will say that Ron Paul is probably one of the most fiscal conservative of all the candidates out there that actually knew what he was talking about in that regard.
Well, he is, and what he is too is someone who has, for 20 years that he's been in the Congress, has a record. This is like I keep telling people when you vote. As a statistician, I know that 94% of the incumbents are returned to office. And I keep saying, oh, my gosh, why? Every one of those people that are incumbents, like Ron Paul, who's been in Congress for 20 years, has a record. And he has an impeccable record in upholding the tenets of the Constitution. That's why he's so popular. He's popular because people who understand the Constitution know he's one of very, very few who champions the Constitution.
Well, he's definitely a constitutionalist.
Pardon?
I said he's definitely along the lines of a constitutionalist.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And he has an impeccable record that proves that, okay? I actually watched a speech of him with Bernanke over the dollar. The fact that it's the inflation that they're causing by having all this fiat money. People have to understand that the money that you and I spend is created by this private bank called the Federal Reserve, who then uses our printing presses. I don't know if they pay for the paper and the ink, but they're creating that money out of thin air. It is not backed by gold or silver as it used to be, as the Constitution requires that it be.
And it hasn't been backed by a gold standard for many, many years, since like the 70s.
I think Nixon put the last kibosh on that, and I think the person that, the president that was before that, I'm not sure. I'm trying to think who was the one that, I think it started with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in fact. And then there was a gold standard, but it was a ridiculous number, like $35 an ounce. Okay, I think it's like $9.45 an ounce right now, $945 an ounce. $35 an ounce, and then we were losing our shirt around the world because we in the United States weren't able to get $35 an ounce. $35 gold backing per whatever unit, I believe is $1. The gold standard, in other words, was $35. Well, but we couldn't do that in the United States, but around the world they were killing us by taking up our gold at $35 an ounce, which was cheap. It was a bargain. So Nixon said, okay, that's it. We're going to do away with that completely. So that's when the last of the gold standard ended.
Right.
But to come back to the issues of Dr. Robert A. Pastor and the fact that he is what I call the Pied Piper of the North American Union, he also was a person who was a member of what they called the Linowitz Committee that was was part or worked during the Carter administration. The Linowitz Committee actually, with Dr. Robert Pastor, who had no position at the time in our government, pushed through the Congress the selling of the Panama Canal. And I can recall, because I'm an oldster, I can recall when they did that during the Carter administration. And I was stunned. I said, why on earth would we give away the Panama Canal to a Marxist dictator who was running Panama at the time, and not only that, but pay him $400 million to take it? And Dr. Robert Pastor was part of that Linowitz Committee, and I thought to myself, why are they doing that? All the blood and treasure that we spent to create the Panama Canal, why would we just give it away and then pay them to take it? And who was taking it? So I thought, oh, well, our government, they know things that I don't know, and I guess they know what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now I understand why they did it. I put two and two together. One of the things that's going on with the North American Union is not only the open borders, totally unprotected borders. I mean, we've been protecting the borders of North and South Korea for 50 years. We've sent our border patrol, our current border patrol, over to Iraq to train people, the military over there, how to protect the borders. But we can't close our own borders. There's also Title VIII, U.S. Code, the law that governs immigration in this country. It's a huge body of work that's totally ignored, not enforced. There's all kinds of policies that emanate from the Department of Homeland Security, under which controls ICE, which is over ICE, and they're just totally ignoring our law everywhere and every place. So take that, and then the next step, and again, this is again coming out of NAFTA. NAFTA was not enough for the one world monopolists. That's what I call the robber barons of yore, who are running our country behind the scenes. They wanted something more, so they created this thing called the Security Prosperity Partnership, and this is the vehicle which they are going to use to bring forward the North American Union. It is, some people have called it NAFTA Plus, some people have called it NAFTA on steroids. It actually was a signed agreement between the three countries, Canada, Mexico, and the United States, in March of 2005 in Waco, Texas. And then there was another trilateral summit on the Security Prosperity Partnership. You can go to the website. It's called spp.gov. And that was in Cancun, Mexico, the following year, 2006. And in 2007, there was a third trilateral summit in Montebello, Quebec, Canada. They are now planning a fourth summit in New Orleans. That's going to be April 20, I think it's 21st and the 22nd.
This is the Trilateral Commission you're referring to?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is trilateral meaning three
parties.
Yes, the President of the United States, the President of Mexico, and the Prime Minister of Canada. Now, if you go to the spp.gov website, it says on there, because people started to catch on to what was really going on, because everything's being done in secrecy behind closed doors, okay? The media is totally silent about it because they're part of the situation. And there are people in our Congress who claim they have no idea what this is all about. But the Security Prosperity Partnership, it says on the spp.gov website, it says after people started nosing around, so to speak, trying to learn what's going on in their own country, because they're not being told in the mainstream media. They put up this page called Facts, F-A-C-T-S, and Myths, M-Y-T-H-S. And, of course, one of the myths that they stated was that there was no agreement signed between the three of them, and that it was just a dialogue about how we can have better security, more prosperity, and a partnership between the three countries. Well, that was a lie, and I prove it. I have the official documents, again, off of another government website in Canada. Prime Minister Paul Martin was the prime minister that was there at the first meeting at 2005 in Waco, Texas, at Baylor University, and he has a 5-page document, which I've saved to my computer because I'm afraid they're going to take it down, on a Canadian government site that has a picture of Prime Minister Martin on the front, and the document is signed by Paul Martin at the end. And on page 2 of that, it says very clearly that they did sign an agreement between the three nations. Now, if you understand what an agreement, a signing of an agreement between three nations means, you will understand that what it means is a treaty. If you look at the dictionary definition of the word treaty, you will find the following. This is out of Webster's. Treaty is a formal agreement between two or more nations relating to peace, alliance, and trade, and there's others. The document embodies such an agreement. That's what a treaty is. Well, if that was the case, and apparently it is, according to Prime Minister Paul Martin on a Canadian government website, that agreement was supposed to, according to our Constitution, go before the Senate of our country, federal Senate, for a 2/3 majority yay vote in order for it to be ratified. That was never done. As a matter of fact, in this discussion over the Mexican trucks coming into our country now, again, supposedly due to NAFTA, there was quite a discussion about cutting off the funding to the Department of Transportation, who was trying to push this trucker, allowing Mexican hordes, 100 companies, and I don't know how many trucks per company, into our country in violation of the NAFTA agreement. There was a big discussion about the Senate did actually vote. Bless them, I was really surprised. They actually voted to cut off all funding to the Department of Transportation to push this massive trucking invasion into our Mexican trucking invasion into our country. I left out a little something here having to do with the Panama Canal and its connection to this whole issue. And that is because back down during the Carter administration, the shadow government, the people that are actually running our government, not the puppets you and I get to see, like, whoever's in office at the time, it turns out that they knew then that they were going to build 3 massive ports in the southernmost tip of Mexico on the Pacific side. And, in fact, one of those 3 for certain, I know, and maybe a second one, are actually being built by Communist China. And they're going to bring up the trucks and the rail from those ports. They're going to offload all the Asian shipments, especially Communist China. That's our biggest contributor, at these ports in southern Mexico. They're going to cut out the West Coast ports, which is a lucrative living for a lot of people, and they're going to bring that stuff up through Mexico, paying, peanuts to the Mexican drivers and rail people to bring that into our country. And they're going to bring them into our country on these corridors. Now, some people may have heard about the Trans-Texas corridor, I-35, which actually bisects our country north to south. They're going to bring it up from those southernmost ports in southern Mexico, straight up through Mexico into one of the major ports will be this Trans-Texas corridor, which is all of I-35. I-35 is one of the ones that had the bridge collapse there not too long ago. They're going to bring their all those containers, thousands and thousands of containers every day, all the way up to Kansas City, Missouri. We have now, they're designing and have in place this thing called an inland port. Now, if that isn't an oxymoron, I don't know what is. A port is normally a port of entry to something. And this is actually if you look at where Kansas City, Missouri is, it's like a bullseye in the center of our country. They're going to bring all that stuff from Communist China. Communist China does not love us.
That sounds like Walmart.
Up into our country.
Walmart.
Yeah, it sounds like Walmart, really.
Yeah, Walmart's behind it. They're a big pusher of it, for sure.
Well, of course they are.
So that's just one of the major highways. Again, this is part of the North American Union, folks.
Well,
Another one is called
I hate to
Canada.
interrupt you, Daneen. I hate to interrupt you. We're coming up to a hard break, though.
Okay.
If you'll hang with us here for another 5.
Okay.
You're listening to Daneen Peterson, Dr. Daneen Peterson, excuse me. She's speaking about the North American Union, and you can see her website at stopthenorthamericanunion.com. You can call in. The lines are open, 877-SCARE-U2, 877-222-7382 in just a moment. You're listening to World of the Unexplained, and we'll be back after this. And we're back on World of the Unexplained with Daneen Peterson, Ph.D. I've got to emphasize that. Hey, you worked hard for the Ph.D., Daneen. I've got to brag about it. I worked hard for my J.D.
Uh-huh.
And you brag about it all the damn time.
You never stop bragging.
Here's the thing. D still equals JD. That was my whole thing in law school. You got a D, you still passed. It was great. I'm sure they don't do that on the PhD level, though.
Well, the thing about it is my doctorate actually is really my professional credentials are exactly tied to what I'm doing, the type of research I'm doing, and the way I put things together. I mean, if you don't learn anything by the time you're finished your doctorate, you learn how to write.
That's for sure.
I used to teach research and how to read documents so that you can defend or support them, and how to go about doing research. Some of the courses I taught had to do with people that I taught undergraduate and graduate. But the undergraduate classes, lots of times, were people from the PE department. They really didn't want to be there, but it was a required course.
Oh,
and I would send them cruel, right? I would send them off to their respective libraries. I didn't care what discipline they were in, and I'd make them find some research. And then we would, come back and we would go over it to see whether it was a good piece of research or an okay piece of research or a piece of crap.
When was the last time you taught undergrads?
Golly. Had to be probably late 80s.
Okay, I was going to say they had to be better than they are today. I taught a criminal law class at High Point University a couple summers ago. And, these kids, juniors and seniors were my class. They're all undergraduates. And these kids were so bad at writing. My first test, I gave them 30 multiple choice and 3 essays. The 3 essays were so terribly constructed as far as sentence quality, paragraphs, just grammar and spelling in general that I said, no more. We're going all multiple choice, guys.
Yeah. Before we go on, though, let me fling out these numbers again. 1-877-722-7382 or locally 336-996-1596. That's 1-877-SCARE-U2.
And it is scary.
We're talking about some scary stuff. Go ahead, Scott. What's going on?
Let's talk about some of these. Let's get into the idea of some of the bigger picture. When's this coming down? Is it already happening? What's going on?
It is. One of the pieces that I hadn't discussed yet was the fact that after the signing of the Security Prosperity Partnership in Waco, Texas in 2005, and again, because it was a treaty, but it never was brought before our Senate for the 2/3 majority vote as required by our Constitution. So what did each of these people do that were there, the 3 leaders of the heads of state? Our president came back and actually commanded every department in the executive branch, there's at least 20, Department of Education, Department of Homeland Security, State Department, Department of Commerce, there's just to name a few of the big ones, the Federal Food and Drug Administration, okay, they're all parts of the executive branch. And he commanded them to create work groups, and work groups that had specific tasks assigned to them, specific timelines to produce results, and they had to report back regularly, and they are called ministers. Did you know we had ministers in our country?
I didn't know that. It sounds like an Orwellian fantasy.
Yes, right straight out of the Communist Manifesto, I think. But anyway, we have ministers now, and they routinely get together with their counterparts in Canada and Mexico. And this is the thing that you're not going to be able to see. I will talk about other component parts of the North American Union that you can see. They're in your backyard, they're at your front door, and so on and so forth. Like the truckers, like the illegal alien situation, and so on and so forth. But what these task forces are doing, they are rewriting, or what we call bureaucratic or administrative, or most commonly known to you and I as regulatory law. Okay?
Yeah,
now,
administrative
this law is developed over, like 230 years, and then some. And it has to do with what our societal norms are, what our standards are, what our expectations are. They have to do with securing our health so that we don't get dog food that kills our dogs and lead paint on our toys and
that worked out well.
Et cetera,
Yeah.
like we get from China.
Yeah, that worked out well.
China.
And toys and, lead in the Valentine's Day suckers, High-quality products the Chinese produce,
Well, that's because they don't have any regulatory laws.
Absolutely.
And we do.
Well,
And of course, we only inspect about 1% of what they send to us.
Yeah.
And we get contaminated fish, and it's horrendous.
Yeah, it is.
So that's where they want us to end up.
Well, Daneen, I hate to interrupt
the
you.
less regulations there are,
I'm going to.
the cheaper it is to produce the product.
Daneen, we've got a caller. I hate to interrupt you. We've got a caller from Los Angeles, Don Cordell. Don, how you doing?
Fine. I'm glad to be on the show with you this evening.
Excellent, thank you.
Awesome, glad to have you.
Yes, I'm running for president of the United States myself, DonCordellForPresident.com. And
Okay.
on my website, I've brought up the fact that our presidents have passed executive orders that allow FEMA to take over our nation under martial law, and that they have passed a law, Public Law 87-297, that gives our government the right to come in and disarm every citizen in the United States for the orderly takeover by the United Nations.
What do you think of that, Daneen?
I know it's true. There's more to it than that. I wrote an article on my website called The Two Acts of Tyranny on the Same Day. Well, we legislatively, I know this is going to sound bizarre to a lot of people out there that are uninformed, we legislatively created a dictator as president of the United States. Doesn't matter who sits in the chair. And that was done in October 14th of 2006. They involved two acts, and that's why it's called Two Acts of Tyranny, ACTS, like an act in a play. One of them involved the Military Commissions Act of 2006, where they eliminated the writ of habeas corpus, which is, according to our Constitution, not allowed to be eliminated.
Well, it has been eliminated previously. Lincoln suspended it.
Yes, but that was supposedly because of the Civil War. It is now officially and legally, and according to our Congress, eliminated. Then the second act that came up was the National Defense Authorization Act of 2007, and in that they eliminated posse comitatus. What's posse comitatus? That's that bright line that used to exist between our military and the police department.
So what year was this? They eliminated posse comitatus?
Yes, it's eliminated.
What year?
As of October 14th, 2006.
Really? So why haven't we militarized the border then, if that's the case?
Oh, because we want those borders wide open.
We want them in, baby.
We want them trucks. Come on,
Come on in.
Come
Open
on,
up the door.
cheaply made, poorly
Come on,
poisonous.
terrorists. Come on up to America. Let's blow some things
Come
up.
on,
That's what you want
illegals.
to do,
Come
right?
on down.
Yeah.
Oh my
Plenty
God.
of room on the front porch.
Don, since we got you on,
Anyway.
since we got you on the horn, Don, what are your running points for your candidacy here?
That I'm going to close the border. I'm going to secure our border. I'm going to deport every single illegal alien. I'm going to stop all of the imports from China. I'm going to close China from having any more imports through that Texas-wide corridor up to Kansas City. I'm going to bring jobs back to the United States.
I wish
Those are very bold
I wish it were
points.
you instead of John McCain. That's all
Yeah.
I've got to say, Don. We need
John
someone.
McCain says that we have to give comprehensive immigration reform.
Yeah, we need to reform
Absolutely.
it. We need to kick them back out. That's
Right.
I agree.
I'm definitely going to do that, and I'm going to help people move into these 22 million homes that are in foreclosure by using Social Security funds as 6% loans for those, so we can have American families back in the...
What Social Security funds? I thought we were tapped out.
Yeah, they spend it
we're
after
not
every
tapped out.
fiscal year. There's none of it left over in any trust fund or anything like that. It's all appropriated federally.
Yeah, we take all that money in, and it goes into the general fund so that Congress can spend it. Instead, I want that money set aside, and we will invest it in these homes, and then the interest that people are paying on at 6% on these home loans will then help to fund Social Security even more in the future.
Well, Don, do you have any more questions for Daneen tonight?
No, that's it. Well, you might check Rex 84 on the Internet. That is the setup where they have established some 600 concentration camps in the United States to lock us up when we start to complain about the North American Union removing our sovereignty.
Don,
Rex 84. Okay,
Don, I want you to shoot me an email at worldoftheunexplained@gmail.com because I want to talk to you later. Okay, buddy?
Okay, thank you.
Actually, let me put you on hold. I'm going to get Dee to get your information. Okay?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, hang on just a second. So
Excellent.
don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Thanks for calling.
Okay, Daneen, I'm sorry about that.
I do discuss Rex 84, and they're called the civilian detention camps. They are been funded by our military, by the Army, and they do exist. And it's been Army policy since 1995. I have a photographic copy of a letter from a congressman to a constituent that specifically states what the Army has and has been doing as far as funding these. Didn't you wonder why they had all those BRAC closings a couple years back when they were all talking about how many we need more military, we don't have enough men under arms in our country because we're fighting on all these funds? Why did they close all those bases? Well, they closed them because they're turning them into what he called concentration camps. I call them gulags.
Yeah, I prefer gulag. That seems more.
Yeah.
So what are we building these for again? I'm sorry, I missed the point. I think.
Old Army bases.
No.
They're being converted. I have a whole video page that one of the videos on there shows you one of the camps that's being converted, one of the Army facilities that's being converted.
Who exactly is being housed at these things?
Nobody yet.
No one yet?
I guess so.
That's what I'm asking. What are these things for? Are they for the renegades, the people in the...
Oh, the talking points were that they're going to be for illegal aliens. As far as deporting illegal aliens, there's no need to. If we enforce Title 8 of the U.S. Code, they will all deport themselves because they won't have jobs. Because
I agree.
It says in Title 8 that it's a felony to employ people that are here illegally.
Mm-hmm.
And there are states there. I would say the one good thing that has come out of this move towards the North American Union is the fact that the states have finally awoken and discovered that they have this thing called states' rights.
Yeah.
And they're starting to, grab the bull by the horn and take the issue into their own arms.
I think we've forgotten about that.
Well,
about states' rights for quite some time.
I tell you, North Carolina's gotten so bad that I'm going to have to start considering it one of these what do they call them? Amnesty cities. That's what amnesty states. It's what it seems like here. Didn't you? We corresponded via email before your appearance on this show. Didn't you tell me your father went to Guilford College?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Chuck and I both went to Guilford. We're both Guilford alums.
Yeah.
We're just fighting Quakers.
Oh yeah,
fighting
Quakers.
But
when your father went to Guilford, I'm sure it was a lot different school than what it is now. It's got a bunch of.
I'm sure it was. In fact, first of all, they didn't leave riffraff like you and me in places like that. But just the upper crust went.
No, it's a bunch of liberal Nazis over there.
Spineless.
It really is.
Please.
They wouldn't carry this show anymore. They carried it when I was in college in 2001. They wouldn't carry this show anymore because we were too conservative for them. And they said that but they're carrying, what was it, that House of Bob crap?
Church of Bob.
Church of Bob. They're carrying that
a
trash.
guy that was on the staff actually over there was funding it privately.
Funding it. But they won't let my views get out because I talk trash about the homosexuals. I talk trash about illegal immigration. I talk trash about whatever I want to talk trash about because everything's okay unless it's your ideas are okay unless
it contradicts
theirs. Exactly.
Right.
Okay, which one of you is in North Carolina?
We're all in North Carolina.
We're all in North Carolina.
Have
actually.
you looked on the back of your driver's license yet?
Yes, the new one.
Do you have a hologram of the North American Union on it?
I haven't looked.
Well, let's look right now.
Let me look here.
That'll be fun.
I noticed it was different from what it was before.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't look closely at it.
It's one of the first states in the country to go to capitulate and put the North American Union hologram on the back of your driver's license.
North Carolina.
I personally plan to refuse to carry a driver's license with a North American Union hologram on it.
Oh, you have a new one, Chuck. Okay. Look.
Oh my God, it does.
Oh my God, it does it?
It really does. She's not lying.
Is this the same one I've got, Chuck? Is that it? Is that it on mine?
Yeah, that's it.
That is it? No, you're not kidding me.
Oh my God,
and
this
I'm
is
going
a
to tell
planet.
you that particular hologram ended up on your driver's license because of a group of a non-governmental group in this country who's been in existence since the 1930s. The 1930s is probably the worst decade of the last century because there's so many things happened in the 1930s. Detrimental things to our country and our sovereignty. Who actually is behind sponsoring and getting through, I don't know, the same way Robert Pastor got before our Congress any number of times because there are people behind the government running things that we don't know about.
Well, you know,
And they sponsored that. They're getting every state to conform to that, and they're nobody. It says right in the fine print of all of these things where they're gathering all this information, that information be shared with all kinds of entities in this country and foreign governments.
Well, here's what bothers me too, Daneen. You know, you look at the new passports. Have you seen the very new ones? I just turned in an old one the other day to get a new one. I'm going to Jamaica for my honeymoon. But you know, you look at the new passports. Now they've got these chips in them. What's going on?
They have an RFID chip.
Where's our First Amendment? Where is our First Amendment rights?
Dibs on you while you're outside the country. That's what they're doing.
Of course they are. Well, where's my First Amendment rights here?
Well, somebody said to me, I made a trip up to Canada last summer to meet my counterpart in Canada who was fighting against the North American Union. She's the leader of the Canadian Action Party up there, Connie Fogel. And I had to go to Toronto. She lives in Vancouver, BC, so this was the first chance I had to get to her because she was close to where I was living at the time, which is in northern New York. And I went across the border just like I always have before. I traveled for 3 years in my RV. I went back and forth across the Canadian border with my driver's license.
Yeah.
Now you're going to be required to have a passport.
Or have you seen what they have now? The passport card. It's brand new, and it's just for people that want to cross from Canada on those borders. It's a card. It's not even a real passport.
The lady said to me, "Oh, well, isn't that wonderful? We now have to show our passport to get across the border." I said, "It's not wonderful. It costs money to get a passport, and there's more in that passport than you could ever imagine the RFID chip." I didn't bother to argue that point. She said, well, that thought I was great. And I said, you won't think it's great when they start asking you for that passport to go to the grocery
Can you see, guys, can you see how this is going to happen? Let's say we have an unpopular political rally, and the government can come in and they can basically sweep an area and they can tell every single person that was there by the RFID and whatever card they're carrying.
So basically don't carry any identification.
Oh, and you don't have
at least not a passport.
They don't have to get that card from you. You can just you can just bypass their equipment and it'll read it.
I mean that's scary. That right there is a smack at freedom of assembly. What if I don't want to be known? What if I want to be anonymous when I go to these rallies?
Well, like I said, just don't bring any kind of cards with you at all.
You know, then you run into other problems when the police come up and say, produce some identification.
Well, this is pretty much a step away from what Giuliani had proposed, which was a national ID with an RF micro chip embedded in it.
Thank God Giuliani got the boot before any of this got anywhere.
I don't. Like you said, a driver's license used to be a driver's license. Somebody did quite a soliloquy on all the places that are federal buildings. A lot of them are tourist places. And how about the courthouse? Suppose you have court cases going to a federal building and you don't have one of these real ID cards. They're not going to let you in? I don't know. They did a whole list of things, and national parks. Can you get national parks if you don't have a real ID? Think about it. If people don't look. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to confess that before I did this North American Union material, I was an anti-illegal alien activist for 2.5 years and wrote some pretty powerful stuff. And one of the things I did was when the Real ID was first proposed and passed in Congress, I clapped my hands. I thought, oh, great, this is a way
we can finally get them.
Eliminate, all of this stolen identification, and we'll have this Real ID card. And plus these states that were, giving driver's license to people that shouldn't get them, all right? People who are not here in this country legally should not have a driver's license.
Plain and simple, yep.
But come on, how can they go to the store though in their car to get food for their anchor baby then? I'm sorry. Did I say that?
Here, and they should do what people did that came to this country legally.
Imagine that.
Bring a shopping cart all the way from your house. That's what you need to do.
They couldn't pass the driver's license test. Same with this issue of I have a very big article on bilingualism. I believe that bilingualism is being used to subvert our country.
Well, isn't it amazing that the United States has no national language?
And it should.
It's called English.
Well, one of the fundamental principles of being a nation is having a language. France, Russia, all the European countries have a specific language that they say it's our language.
Congress did vote on it at one time, I think in the 19th century, and I think it was a vote between English and German. English won out.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But as a result of it, the legislation didn't have any bearing. It had no teeth. So
less than
no
a week
repercussions.
ago, 33 senators, that's a third of the senators, voted no to making English our national language.
I want all their names.
They're out there. They're on the internet. Believe me. Can we go back to the North American?
I'm sorry. I got off on a tangent.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But you did touch on part of it there. It was the driver's license.
Yeah.
The thing about NAFTA is NAFTA was actually a treaty. It was signed by all three governments. It has to do with trade, definition of a treaty in the dictionary. But it never came before our Senate for that two-thirds majority vote. Why? Because they created NAFTA as a law. When the kerfuffle went down in the Senate about having funding, the Department of Transportation, which is now being run by Mary Peters, who happens to also be a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, isn't that something? Who is taking what was in NAFTA. NAFTA said, okay, yes, Mexican truckers can come into our country, but here's this laundry list of things they have to do in order to be permitted to come into our country. They never did it. They never did the things that were on this list in NAFTA, which is a law and not a treaty. And the distinction is major because with a treaty comes international oversight along the lines that I read you in the very beginning of the program. International courts would have a say over our courts, okay, in disputes and so on. So when they had the big kerfuffle in the Senate about funding the Department of Transportation's, what the Department of Transportation did is to circumvent the NAFTA pilot program to have Mexican trucks come into this country. Mary Peters created this thing called a demonstration project. In other words, she made an end run about what were the laws it was set and signed for in NAFTA. She made an end run around it by having this demonstration project. Now, I'll give Clinton credit. He kept the Mexican trucking industry within 25 miles of coming into our country. They couldn't go beyond 25 miles, and then they had to transfer their shipments over to American truckers.
So it's changed since then? Because I was actually under the impression it was still 25.
They're freely in our country now. She defied the Senate after the Senate said no money could be used in order to push this demonstration project forward. And as the program is continuing, oh, yes, they're in this country, absolutely.
So have you heard then about this intra-country interstate that's supposed to go through Mexico, up through Oklahoma, maybe it's Minnesota, up into Canada?
Well, that's what she was talking about.
She was talking about that first hour.
I got you. I guess I missed it. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
There's actually, the one you're thinking of is the Canamex Highway. Canamex Highway comes up through Mexico, enters into Arizona, goes up through Idaho, goes up through Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Montana, on into Canada, all the way up to the southernmost tip of Alaska.
What are we going to do about tort reform then? My God, I mean, think of all the accidents we're going to have with these Mexican trucks on the road that kill families of, 3 and 4. Who can we sue anymore? Are they going to let us do that?
Well, here's the distinction between the way Mexico trucking is and what we have in our country. One thing I did want to mention, I don't know if I mentioned this before. I may have. Sorry if I repeat myself. But
no, go ahead.
The Supreme Court told Mexico that they don't have to abide by our emission laws. American truckers do, but they don't. So that was when they were within the 25-mile zone thing. Right?
And they didn't have to have brakes on them either.
Oops.
Well, here's the situation. Here's some of the comparisons. The driver's age for a CDL license and driving a 18-wheeler in this country is 21. In Mexico, it's 18.
Wonderful.
The hours of service limits for drivers in the United States is 10 consecutive hours driving and up to 15 consecutive hours on duty. In other words, you might be sitting idle in your truck, but you're still on duty. 8 hours minimum, a maximum of 70 hours driving in an 8-day period. What does Mexico have? None.
None.
They have none.
Let me guess, no drug testing either, huh?
No, I'm sure not.
Well, that's the next one on my list. Random drug testing. United States, yes, for all drivers. Mexico, no.
So I could theoretically at 18 years old as a Mexican, I could drive a truck from Mexico all the way to Canada, baby, nonstop.
While smoking pot.
With enough methamphetamine in my body to get me there.
You got it right. There's actually, and I've written about this, about the Master Teachers Union actually sent an investigative reporter down to Mexico about 5 or so years ago, and they did a, in-depth investigative reporting on just how much drug use is done by the drivers down there. Well, you can understand if they're, driving 80 hours a week and there's no limit and they're paying them peanuts, well, what do? They do amphetamines and all kinds of drugs to go up and come down, all right? And the reason they don't do any drug testing in Mexico is they have no labs.
Oh, wow.
No labs to trust, no chain of command, chain of custody, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Here's another one, logbooks. The United States, of course, has, my husband hates his DOT log. He hated it. He always complained about it.
Oh, there's ways to get around those, Daneen.
Logbooks that have date graphs and so on and so forth, part of the inspection criteria in Mexico.
That's why all the good truckers carry 2 books. No, I'm kidding.
They had a new law, but it simply wasn't enforced, so virtually no truckers used them. Here's a big one. This is a really big one. The maximum weight limit in pounds in the United States trucking industry is 80,000 pounds. What is it for Mexico? 135,000 pounds.
Oh, my God. Well, let me ask you another question. You know how in the U.S., you remember years ago we had the debate on whether or not we should allow 3 tractor trailers pulled by 1 truck to be on the highway, and they said, no, we're not going to let that happen. What's the deal in Mexico?
I have no idea. But even the double scares me wagging down the highway.
Oh, yeah.
Behind him many times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
135,000 pound
now,
weight limit.
Same way here, we have roadside inspections. You see them all the time when you travel on the interstate. Pull over here, you have to be, inspected. We have them in the United States. We have them everywhere. And last year, the inspection program began like that in Mexico, but then it got discontinued. That's very typical of Mexico. They make all kinds of promises, and they sort of do a half-hearted attempt at them, and then they don't do anything.
I'm gonna
because of the corruption that's so rife in their government.
Well, of course. This is what I say when people say, why would we, the United States, want to be combined with a corrupt, plutocratic oligarchy, which is what Mexico is, and a socialist parliamentary system in Canada? I love my Canadian neighbors. I have friends up there, RVing friends. But they're different than us. I mean, their whole society is built around a different system than ours. Why are we combining 3 countries into one?
That's a very good question. Yes. But why?
There's a whole lot of other standards, too, that they don't do. So that's what they did. The president named Mary Peters, a member of the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, to the head of the Department of Transportation for the specific purpose of ramming this demonstration project through. Even after our Senate said, no, we're not going to fund it, they just kept right on doing it. And guess what? Where did they learn that they can just do as they doggone please and not pay attention to anything or anybody? They learned in the European Union.
Oh,
of course, the EU.
The old country.
Well, I don't know where you sit on all this, Daneen, but I'm a Christian conservative, and I believe that the end times are near and all that good stuff, and I believe the EU was one of those harbingers, and I believe that if this North American Union does, in fact, thank you for dropping that,
that's
Trent.
Really clumsy.
If the North American Union does in fact come to fruition, like it seems it's going to, I believe that's also a sign of the end times.
Well, I'm a Bible-believing Christian myself. I do not believe that the end times are here. I believe what's happening is totally man-made.
Uh-huh.
And I believe that there is a way around it, but the problem is our media is totally muzzled.
I know, they're ignoring
our media
it.
Is our major media. I'm talking television, radio, book publishing, Hollywood, newspapers, etc., throughout this country are completely controlled by 5 corporations.
Well, yeah, and they are.
What are they? 5?
They are. There's, AOL Time Warner is one of them.
Clear Channel?
No. It's General Electric, Disney.
Disney's one of the other
News Corp, Warner Brothers, and the one you.
Yep.
Yeah, AOL Time Warner. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh no! Let me make some. This is really funny. I was driving to work this morning, and we have a very large radio station in our area. It's 101.1 WZTK. It's a 100,000 watt talker. Yeah, FM talker. It's huge. You can hear that almost all over the entire state of North Carolina. You can even pick it up in Virginia. Well, they had Brad and Britt's the morning personalities. They had someone from North Carolina government. I didn't catch what exactly she was before, but she was talking about this exact topic that we're talking about tonight. And they had her on this morning, which kind of made me mad because I'm like, stealing our ideas. Right?
Yeah.
But, I heard her go on there, and, the way that they treated her as if, this is some crazy, wild fantasy. It just really, it hit me the wrong way.
Yeah. The same way that
this program, this woman was talking about the North American Union and the host.
Yeah, they played devil's advocate, but they played it a little too well. You know what I mean? And then they had callers calling, well, I think it, this, that, and the other, and I think it, and it's just like, oh, God, please.
Yeah, play along to the tune. Okay, so basically, all right, going back to that question originally, what you were talking about, why would we combine with these two very, very different forms of government? How would that affect us, if you were trying to smooth it on over? I don't know how, we only have a little bit of time. And then the second question would be, what do we do to stop the North American Union?
Yeah.
Well, number one, you have to get educated, okay? Because you're not going to get it from your television set or your newspapers, et cetera. You're just not. It's not out there. It won't be out there.
Trent, you're screwed.
That's what my website's all about. It's about education. I've been educating people since I was 3. That's a big thing in my life. In fact, if any of this that I've talked about tonight just flies over the top of your head, if you go to stopthenorthamericanunion.com, there's 5 articles linked to the very top of my page. The top 3 are the most important. You just click on here, and it'll take you to the articles.
And you're not.
Things I've covered so far.
You're not making any money off this either.
No.
I just want to point that out to people that she's not making a dime off you going over there and checking this stuff out. Right. This is free.
Every penny that it takes to run that website comes out of my pocket, and I'm retired. Living on Social Security because my husband just got laid off from his job.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So anyway, the article that they want to read, if they want to get to the basics, is called Treason Abounds, Government Cabal Plots North American Union, NAU. If you want to find out about the 2 acts of tyranny on the same day, that's the name of the article you want to read. Then the last of the 3 articles that I've created is called The EU and the NAU, 2 peas in a pod. And the reason I say that is because everything they did to create the European Union and bring it to the point of the European Union took them 55 years. And that's how they know that they can just thumb their noses at us, we the people who are supposed to be their boss, and just do what they doggone please, because that's how the European Union came about. And the other thing is, they keep talking about it as if, and this is what Dr. Robert Pastor said all the way back in 2001, when he wrote the book and touted the North American community. We will never be a community. We will be a union. And if you look up those 2 things in the dictionary, you will understand the difference. But here's a snapshot of the comparison between us, and we will, according to their plan, be the North American Union in 15 years from the date of NAFTA forward. Here we go. The European Union began, just like we're beginning, this is the most recent version for us, began as a coal and steel trade agreement back in 1951. That was the European Union, the way they started. Okay. Ours is beginning with, guess what? The North American Free Trade Agreement, or as we commonly know it as NAFTA. Then the next thing that happened in the European Union was it morphed into what they call the European Economic Community, the EEC. And if you're an old person like me, you remember when that existed. And then for us, we morphed into, from the Free Trade Agreement, we've gone to the SPP, so we are now a North American, this is what Robert Pastor called a North American community. So a European Economic Community and a North American community.
So isn't this...
Then the EEC morphed into, and a lot of people know this one, the common market. Remember that? So now that NAFTA was established for us, it's morphed into the Security and Prosperity Partnership. Common market, prosperity partnership. Then the next thing that happened was the common market in 1973. Britain joined the common market in 1973. They didn't belong to it before that. It then morphed into the European Union. Now, I have a video on my video page that talks about the real face of the European Union. It is a documentary that was created in 2004, I believe. It has lots of people in it that were players at the time that Britain joined the common market, thinking, well, this is, we're all around each other here as the big market, and we're all going to get in the same boat and row in the same direction, and we'll have this great thing called a common market. But so they were lied to, and they say that in the documentary. The real face of the European Union. Then the Security Prosperity Partnership, which was begun in 2005 here, is morphing into the North American Union. The SPP is the vehicle to get there. Then the EU has a single currency called the euro, and, of course, their plan for us is to have the Amero. So, yes, it's coming, and it's coming in 15 years instead of 55 years because they had learned a lot of lessons. I'm going to give you one primary example from the European Union. 2, maybe 3 years ago now, the 27 nations that constitute, there wasn't 27 then, but I think there was 24, agreed on what the European Constitution would be. They had a big, fabulous signing ceremony where they said, okay, here's the Constitution. It is now going to go out and be ratified by the 24 and now 27 members of the European Union. And if one country says, no, we don't like this, we're not going to ratify this European Constitution, it's done. We have to come back and shuffle the cards and agree on this and that and the other thing. Well, guess what? 2 countries said no. France said no, and the Dutch said no. Did it make any difference? No. They just went right ahead, and they are running the country little by little according to the European Union, which I understand from people who know these things. It is very close to the communist Russia's Constitution.
I thought the last 2 holdouts for the EU were actually Great Britain and Germany, because they were afraid of how it would affect their economy, that their economy was going real strong at that time.
Oh, I thought it was Great Britain and Denmark.
Oh, wait a minute, guys.
Anyway.
Britain doesn't. I mean, or England, they still use the pound. They don't use the euro.
They do use the euro as well.
Do they use the euro as well? I did not know that.
Is it like a double currency? Or
they still retain the right to have their own currency, but I mean, you also have universal currency throughout the continent in the form of the euro.
I got you.
But I had a question for you. You don't think actually that the North American Trade Union could potentially have some benefits for the United States as a potential economic counterweight to the EU?
Oh, give me a break. You know Ross Perot saying NAFTA was going to create a great sucking sound? Oh, well, it did. We had mega surpluses with both Canada and Mexico. We now have trade deficits of $80 billion a year with Canada and $50 billion a year with Mexico. Tell me how great NAFTA was for us economically.
Yeah.
Well, how does the Muslim angle play into this and terrorism? I'm curious.
Okay, all right.
Oh, well, it's just like all the wars of the 20th century and beyond. They're there to keep us in tow. They're there to create the Patriot Acts of the country, the National Defense Authorization Acts of this country, the Homegrown Terrorist Acts in this country, all of the things that are incrementally, little by little, taking away all of our rights, our Bill of Rights and our Constitution. That's what the whole thing is.
Yeah, banding together.
Just recently said in the last couple of weeks, they expect us to be in Iraq for 100 years, or no, fighting the terrorists for the next 100 years. It's a boogeyman.
Yeah.
It's a fake boogeyman.
Banding together against a common enemy. A common enemy that really is not there, really.
Well, first of all, terrorism is a tactic. Okay? So why do we have a war on terrorism? We have a war on drugs. We have all kinds of war. Well, it's manipulation. It's propaganda manipulation.
Yeah. That seems about right.
So who do you feel they've set aside to groom for the new presidency?
I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
I said, who do you feel that these shadow government people that be, going back to an earlier statement, who do you feel that they've groomed for this new presidency in the United States?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. First of all, I'm apolitical, so I don't support any single candidate. Now, I do have Ron Paul material on my video page, but it all has to do with the Federal Reserve, the North American Union, and things like that.
Yeah, but I mean...
I believe, and listen, I was a card-carrying Republican for 50 years. I turned in my card.
Yeah, but who do
It was very hard for me to do that because my parents, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents were all Republicans.
All right.
And I actually have a photograph of my grandmother standing right next to Richard Nixon. I mean, that's how she was. Okay.
Yeah.
So it broke my heart to do that. But there are no two political parties. They're two wings of the same bird, or two legs of the same pair of pants.
Republicrats. Anyway.
And the situation with, didn't you think it was so bogus when Romney dropped out of the race?
It was awful.
Why? Because that left John McCain as probably going to be the nominee for the Republican Party. John McCain is despised nationwide. If he gets 2% of the votes in the presidential election, I'll eat my hat.
Well, here's the thing.
That's just a gross.
No. Here's the thing. Who do you believe?
I'm saying it to make a point. All right.
Who do you believe though?
I think it was in North Carolina. No, I'm sorry, it was South Carolina. When McCain won the primary caucus or whatever they do in South Carolina, there was a man that actually went around and tried to find people that voted for John McCain. Now, everybody loves to tell people that they voted for the winner, don't they?
Yeah.
He couldn't find one person who said they voted for John McCain. I mean, the black boxes are
It's because he was at the Edwards rally. No, listen, no, seriously. Who exactly though?
No, but let me tell you what I think is going to happen. I think they deliberately knocked off Romney to make McCain the front runner for the nomination, and
Okay.
I think they did that because they want Obama win by default.
That was what I was getting ready to ask. Who do you think they want to win? We've got a caller from Raleigh, North Carolina, Ron Paul Hunter. How's it going tonight, buddy?
Hey, it's going just fine, Jay. How do you hear me, man?
You sound great out here.
Okay. Look, who exactly is they? I got dragged through the last part of that conversation. Who is they that want Obama to be elected? Is this the people who are backing NAFTA or people that want a constitutional government?
Daneen, I'll let you answer that.
They are the shadow government, the people that are really running our government. I mean, the people that you see in office are puppets.
The question I had was, have you ever heard the Martin Luther King speech? It was played on Reverend Al Sharpton's show a couple of, I guess, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Does anyone listens to Al Sharpton's show? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, Jay, park it for a second. Look,
Go ahead.
What it basically said was, and to summarize it was, if America couldn't live up to its constitutional obligations of all men being created equal and actually live up to it, that the nation that did not know God would come and break the back of America. This is basically saying if white people could not share power, and it would not be seen as equality economically and including all the aspects of constitutional law. And I think Barack Obama is a perfect person to be in the middle of that argument and to try and solve it. I've already made my endorsement for Barack Obama. I think he's a constitutional person who will do his best to represent the government, but it's not going to be as well as if it was in the last 16 years. It won't be what people imagine it will be. Yet it will not be what you're construing it to be, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I guess he's bought the soundbite, but he's going to bring change. You need to know. You need to know a little bit more about Barack Obama. Get on the internet. There's tons of stuff on the internet.
Did you see the suit he was dressed up in that the Clinton campaign leaked today?
No.
He was dressed in a what was it a Sudanese elder's garb.
He's a Muslim, man. I told you.
Well, all politicians do stuff like that.
Yeah. Jay.
No, it's not propaganda. It's truth.
Propaganda. I'm sorry. It's appealing to a certain group and then this other group, and
He was actually in Africa promoting Muslim takeovers, killing. Oh well, I'm not going to go into it.
See, he's a Muslim. See.
Okay.
I have at least 50 articles, and lots of them I know they're not propaganda. I know they're not.
And there's this counter argument that I have. Well, not an argument, but it's sort of a concurrent theory type thing. I call it the capitulation government, which was something, as far as I'm concerned as a historian, and I guess I'm a left-handed historian, is that the British government installed some kind of back door to the American government that was supposed to be a multi-generational thing that was full of sociology and tried to manipulate the American way of life, and eventually its goal would have been to destroy the Constitution and turn America back into a colony.
Huh.
So what I think
that's true. That's very true. People don't understand.
But what I'm saying is, in the later years,
I only go back 100 years in the work that I do.
Right.
But there were people in this country at the signing of our Constitution who were busy trying to undo this and take us back to being a British colony. That's correct.
Think you're right. Multiple people are trying to undo things even as we speak. The point I was trying to make is that this capitulation government, I think, was eventually compromised by our own government and is being used as something that we go to before war. It's like and especially once we have nuclear weapons, there has to be almost a shadow government to deal with the rest of the world because, if you really go wild, wild west with thermonuclear weapons, you say, hey, don't do that. The first time somebody from another country does it, you're going to shoot them. And if you shoot them with thermonuclear weapons, then their world is over with. You've blown up all the satellites in orbit. Everybody's TV goes blank. All the cars stop working. So the government doesn't want to use drastic measures with dealing with, with either terrorism or with having to deal with other countries that are going to soon be getting these weapons. I guess it's like, if you look at it from a Christian point of view, it's a call to maturity is what I was saying. Even dealing with hideous things like built-in backdoor black hand governments that are trying to manipulate you to be a Christian and an American and to hear the Constitution is what brought me to Barack Obama, not rumors of his Islamic connections, because on his website he says he's a born-again Christian. So Well, I got
That's
to
a
take
lie.
God's word for it. You can't
That's
say
a lie.
It's a lot easier to attack him on his lack of substance and his ideology, his idealism rather, than to attack him for supposedly being this Muslim in disguise. I don't.
He's
buy
a
it. I
Muslim.
don't
He's a
buy it.
Muslim. Muslim.
A Methodist that's hooked up with a bunch
Muslim.
of
Farrakhan, Muslim. I don't care.
Ex-Nation of Islam, guys. That's all it is, man.
You're just wow. What? Okay.
I hate to be an apologist for Obama.
Yeah, but
I
there's
don't
a certain.
care if
You got
he's
a
Muslim.
point,
I do
Chuck.
care that he's lying about it.
There we go.
Well, that's just that can be stated as your opinion, but there's no one else in the world that agrees with that. So millions of
No
people.
one else in the world that agrees with that, Ron?
Entire
Millions of
planet?
people that
Come on.
that have given
Just a bunch of right-wing conspiracy theorists on the internet.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me call that guy right now. We didn't even get to that.
Too,
AM radio.
Buddy Michael Savage.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with Michael Savage, by the way.
Oh, well.
Oh, brother.
Except he doesn't have a brain in his head.
Okay, Ron.
All right, Ron. Bye. Thanks for calling.
That was a very good point you made. Thank
I got
you.
one point.
Go ahead.
Historically speaking, that a lot of the slaves that were captured and brought to America against their will were Muslim. That, I believe, is why Barack Obama has gotten any contact with the Islamic world.
Oh, my God. Bye, Ron. Bye. Cut him off. He's gone.
Legitimacy is because they
Cut him off.
representative.
My show. Bye. All right.
That was so the kingdoms of Hausa and Fulani and the Igbo and Nigeria were
They're all Muslims, Trent. Good Lord.
Some of them.
Where do we get these people?
Some of them were Muslim, I guess, but I mean, I think for the most part they're animist. And a lot of times, anyway, I'm going on
I
wild
thought
tangents.
Ron was a good Christian conservative guy. He seemed that way about a year ago when he started
We
calling the
have
show.
to stop thinking like that. Didn't we get fooled in the year 2000?
I didn't get fooled, but
I did.
You were all about
I was
a
a raging ACLU card carrying liberal in 2000. I was. I learned my lesson. I'm one of the worst kinds. I'm a convert to the new cause.
Yeah, it's like those people that give up smoking cigarettes. They become absolutely overbearing.
I'm that man.
And they're no fun to be around.
I am that guy. Anyway.
Okay, we have a few more minutes. Daneen, I'm sorry.
Denise, oh,
what
that's
is
great.
up with me screwing up people's names? I'm
Daneen,
sorry.
explain to us how is the economy? And this is I figure this is one of the puzzle pieces in the puzzle. Is the economy going to get so bad in the United States, i.e., from oil crisis or whatever, that it's going to plunge us down into this area where this union can take over?
Chinese loans, for that matter.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you. First of all, the Chinese own about 30% of our mortgage papers. So if they ever invade our country, which they may, coming up this highway, which is one of the hypotheses that I have about this highway, where you can come all the way into Kansas City. But there are 5 items that will bring forth martial law in this country, and that's what's going to happen. I don't even think there'll be another election.
Well,
I believe they'll bring forth martial law.
Do you believe?
That is because one of the items in the list is economic, collapse.
Do you believe that martial law could possibly be brought on by an American Hiroshima, being 5 or 6 of these Islamic terrorists planning these small nuclear weapons in 7 of the most populous cities or whatever going off at the same time?
I don't think it'll be that. I think it'll be an economic collapse or something, a bird flu. That's another thing that's on the list.
Avian flu.
A dirty bomb going off somewhere, that's a possibility. Or other conditions. And what people don't understand when martial law comes forward, it's not just martial law. It automatically invokes a whole series of horrendous executive orders. What are executive orders? The president sits down at his desk, gets out his pen, writes an order, puts it in the federal register, and 30 days, or 60 days, or 90 days, depending on who you ask to give you that answer, it becomes law.
And then there's no
the president can
constitution.
legislate law. Executive orders will run this entire country by the military and by people like InfraGuard. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I have.
That's okay. InfraGuard, all of those CEO, well-connected Fortune 500 people, and our government, isn't that fascism, will be running this country under martial law.
Well, how is that any different than the presidential signing statements that we've been experiencing over the last 6 or 7 years?
Yeah.
That's practice, Chuck.
It's outrageous.
That's
The whole thing's
practice.
If people would start, that's what I do. That's my gift from God, by the way. My ability to connect the dots, and that's what I do.
Excellent. Daneen, I'm really sorry.
We've got to go.
We're running out of time. Thank you so much. It's been
you've got to come back later, Daneen. We had a great time tonight.
Definitely. We only scratched the surface.
I know. We had 2 hours. We talked too much. I'm sorry, Daneen. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. Glad to anytime.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
And that was Daneen Peterson that Chuck just hung up on without her saying
Chuck.
bye.
You got to jump quickly with me, man.
I know.
Man, that
You
was
sit there and you hang
crazy.
too long, I think you're gone.
I know.
I mean, that was just the craziest 8 minutes of Wotu I've seen in a long time.
Isn't it awesome?
With Ron, you, me, and
Chuck even.
Daneen
Chuck's
and
getting
Chuck,
in on
and
it.
everybody was jumping in on this thing. Oh, it was great. It was like Rock'em Sock'em Robots, except there are
Without
10
the
of them,
robots.
except without the robots. And we had a presidential candidate actually call on.
I know, dude.
How awesome is that?
That's why I got D to get his information.
Oh,
We're going to have him
fantastic.
on the show. That's what I'm
Yes,
thinking.
yes,
At
absolutely.
least for an hour, maybe 2.
We got like 50 seconds.
I know.
Probably should play the music, Chuck.
Yeah, cue the music, man.
Oh, what a crazy night. Come on.
Oh, the music's not even cueing, dude.
Look, we got it. We got it.
All right, Chuck's got it. Reminds me of the old days of Wotu, ladies and gents. Just
was a
good
lot
old
of-
fun.
That was some craziness.
Hadn't had that much fun behind a mic in a long time.
Pretty awesome.
Thank you so much, guys. This is Jay Scott, your only JDDJ on the OmniSound Radio 1 network.
And this is Trent Lackey. We're coming to you from Kernersville, North Carolina. Small town where we talk about big things. Thanks to all the radio stations. Chuck?
We out!